Welcome to Luthier's Tips, Tools and Training from Crimson Guitars. I'm Ben Crow, and this episode is sponsored by my crushing inability to let something slide. In the last video, I started teaching myself how to bezel set sapphires to put down the side of two guitars. In the interim period, we've finished building them, and these may be my favorite guitars I've ever built. They sound amazing, and we'll play them for you later, and they look incredible, but the sapphires down the side, they are sitting proud because I thought that they required edge light in order to sparkle, but I set them in tiny silver tubes so they weren't particularly massive, hoping that the silver would act as another visual aid to, accentuate where you are on the fretboard. And it's not quite big enough. It's not quite bright enough. Because this was basically the first time I had bezel set this many stones. I think I've done it twice before in my life. There's too much variation across. Everything else that we've done is, they're not quite finished. There's a few little bits and pieces that need to be done, but all of the details, everything else is fantastic and beautiful and wonderful. And the slight inconsistencies in these inlays pissed me off. So here we go. This is a little bit of a rehash, but I've bought a few specific tools. I have played with the processes, and I'm now going to rip some stones out of these finished guitars, nerve-wracking, I know, and redo the process. If you don't want to see basically the same thing I did before, then please click like on your way out, and I'll see you in the next episode, where I am going to be essentially trying to replicate Damascus steel or a Makumagane kind of effect, utilizing abalone, mother of pearl, and silver, because the logos where I engraved them into these headstocks, that just looks like a silver headstock. So I'm going to be making a 3D effect on that. In the process, we also built a bass that you haven't seen yet, so that'll be showing up soon too. 3-4 episodes in, and we've started and almost finished an entire project. What the hell is wrong with me? I don't know. Come on then.
Burn it.
So the first thing I need to do is harvest these stones. You can see on the 12th fret where there's just a little bit too much variety. They went in slightly sideways. I really need to sort out the lighting in this room. Setting stones in metal, that's actually genuinely easy. Setting that metal in the wood accurately, that's a different story entirely. On the face of it, that's incredibly visible. It's, they sparkle when you move the light, they look incredible. I don't have an issue with them sticking out of the side. Hell, on the Cyberpunk over there, there's little LEDs that flick out on the side, and they perk up and they don't inhibit playing in any way, shape or form. But yeah, in this case, I'm just not happy enough. So I'm going to rip these stones out, reset them quickly in slightly larger silver tube, and then they are going to be flush set within the fretboard, but there's going to be a slight little bevel in the wood and around the edge of the silver. It's going to be good. Trust. So how do I remove from this basically finished guitar a bunch of stones? This took a minute or two to figure out, but basically I'm going to crack them with a chisel. The stones are going to go flying, so a piece of masking tape on either side to protect the finish. Masking tape on the stone, So when the stone pops out, it's going to stick to something. And it's just a case of cutting away the very thin piece of silver. And this is also illustrating just how delicate these settings are. Guitars get bumped around, and I need them protected. I've lost track of how many of these stones I've dropped. They are sapphires. They're not massively expensive, they're like £3 each, but still. Now, it seems a little bit counterintuitive, but if you hit your chisel with a mallet or something like that, oh, the camera's in the wrong place. Haha. You've got a lot more control over where it goes. It actually stops. If you're pushing it with your hand, you can slip and go. You don't have that stop-start thing. And there's my sapphire. Yeah, this silver, through all the polishing, etc., is very delicate. Next up, I'm using a little stone setting burr, and this is something I picked up on Amazon, a small set of them, not very much money, makes a massive difference. And this is going in a little micromotor tool. Essentially, it's a countersink, and it locates inside the center of each bit of silver. Initially, just make sure I'm where I need to be, and then we go in. I thought that might happen. That one's actually already quite loose, indicative of the problem. Now, over the body of the guitar, I'm going to be a little bit more delicate. I've got this vintage handheld burr, and essentially I'm going to go in and bevel the inside of each piece of silver, and then hopefully I'm going to be able to use this screw to just pull the silver out. Superglue is a great glue, but mechanically speaking, if it receives a shock or heat, it delaminates, especially when it's metal and wood, etc., if there's not much of a key. So yeah, hopefully this breaks. There we go. And now I've got some silver to melt down. It's a little worry dude that Byron made for me. Tell the lump of clay your worries, and then carry on with your day and let that poor thing deal with all of that. The crushing weight of responsibility. Adulthood. Okay, so from here it's just a case of gently opening out the holes. I've got a 3mm gem setting burr, that countersink tool in the micromotor. I'll use that for most of these. The inlays I'm going to end up putting in are about 3.1, so I'll go in with a drill bit later. And over the body, I can either put this into a handle, or I can use drill bits in reverse. I've also set this machine to cut in reverse, so it's a little bit more gentle. Nice. A foot switch controlled rotary tool. It's a game changer. Problem solving is something that I absolutely love to do. And my first choice here is to put this rotary tool I've just been using in an Archimedes drill that I have, into which it just happens to fit. and carefully, just by hand, I'm just going to open these holes out. It's not quite centered in there, Chuck. It's not quite big enough, but it's doing what I need to do gently without the risk of tear out. And when you're making holes bigger than they currently are, especially if you're in something that is finished or delicate wood, you don't go from, say, a 2mm hole to a 5mm in one pass. You incrementally increase it. This is 3. I want the holes to end up being 3.2, 3.3 maybe. So I'm going to slightly open them up, and then with my drill in reverse, I'm going to go in with a normal, well, a long normal twist drill in reverse, and take that last little bit out basically through friction. But if you are worried, and you should be, another option is to take just a standard pin vise, in this case in a nice crimson handle, because hey, comfortable, and just do it by hand. I'm opening something out gently. It's wood, it's not going to be too much of an issue. I will sort the depth out later. So let's slowly and carefully do this, shall we? So in reverse, I've widened the hole out, so it's now the width I need, and now I'm actually putting pressure on and going deeper. What I haven't done yet is actually marked on the side of the drill bit how deep I need to go. So I'll do that in a minute. And of course I've pulled out a drill bit that will happily go over the top of the guitar without damaging anything. Now this is the depth stop that I'm going to use to cut my silver pieces off once I've fit the stones, once I've set the stones. So that is the actual depth that I need to cut. Now the problem with using masking tape as a depth stop is the swarf and shavings can push it out of the way. If that is problematic, the choice is to actually mark on the drill bit itself with a permanent marker. Now friction will remove that eventually, not before you've made your cuts. So that's how deep I want to go. I'm going to go and sort that out, and we can move on to stone setting. A power tool could have ripped out some of the grain, could have made more damage. It would certainly make the job faster, but it's not essential. I would heartily encourage anybody to have at least a working knowledge of how chisels and planes and these things work, and watch other builders, watch other makers, and see what they use, and see, oh, that machinist's pin vise in a handle would be incredibly useful in certain circumstances. I've lost count of the amount of times that I've had to re-drill a 2mm inlay into the side of a neck over a finished body, most often in repairs, and you're not going to go in there with a power drill. And if a power drill is the only thing that you've ever seen used, you're going to try and you're going to break the guitar. So think outside the box. And finally, because preparation is everything, I take one of these, actually I think this is a product that we're starting to sell. It's a new crimson pin vise. It's something I've used a lot recently. I've got a little ball cutter, and I'm just going to very gently open out each hole. So I'm putting a slight burr on there. I think that's too big. Tell you what, scratch that tool. I'm going to use a 4mm gem setting countersink, and yeah, that feels That feels safer for me. I just want to lightly bevel each of these edges. Why did I start in the middle of the neck? Just to confuse myself, I think. Let's go down this way. I've stopped at the 12th fret. And here we have it, a bunch of very neat holes ready to receive some inlays. No mess, no fuss. Okay, another day, and I'm going to set some stones. So I've got some 3.1mm silver tube, and I'm going to be putting a bunch of sapphires in them using slightly different methods and the right tools in this case. Having the right tools makes all the difference. First of all, though, I need to anneal it because this tube does not come pre-annealed. Basically heat it up to a red hot heat and let it cool down naturally, and it will be nice and soft. The difference with this tube is that the walls are much thicker than the stuff I used last time. So actually getting the walls to compress over and around the sapphire, that has proved to be a little bit more problematic. So I need this as soft as I can get it. So I purposefully waited till later in the day to film this bit so that I could take footage of short length of steel being heated red hot, because, you know, that looks cool on footage. And I turned the lights off, which also turns off the ATEM that I use to record my video. I'm feeling a little bit silly right now. Yeah. Oh, and I'm not even off camera properly. God damn it. I'm holding the silver in the saddle square, running the flat edge of this fret end file, there we go, against the table, and it's allowing me to square off the end quite easily. Using a couple of sanding sticks with varying grades of wet and dry paper installed, polish the end up. Not absolutely necessary, but I don't want any file marks next to the sapphire. I keep on wanting to say diamond. And then, yeah, we're on to using a small stone setting tool, which is essentially a chamfer, and then there's teeth around the edge as well, so it's got a hard edge to drill into the end. I'll be careful and just pick up the one. So that's now in there, and flat. The top is nice and located. Just press the stone down, make sure it is wedged in place and flat, essentially oriented exactly how I want it to be. And that's looking pretty good. This is a part of a doming set, I think. But the hole in the end of this punch, I suppose, is not perfectly circular. It's actually slightly V-shaped, so I'm not going to be running up against the stone. And just using this, I'm basically forcing the edge in. And this is a non-standard technique. I don't think a jeweler would do this, but hey, it works and it's quick. That stone is not going anywhere. So it's been compressed on all sides at the same time. So if I were to hit it here, the stone would pop out and vice versa. Now with the hammer, just gently, I'm going to work around. And finish the process. You can also burnish it. And for that, I've been using the back of a chisel. Being careful to avoid the blade, of course. So there you have it. It's set. The metal has wrapped itself around the outside bevels on the stone, and it's not going anywhere. Using a triangular file, this is one of the sort of ultra fine crimson fret crowning files with the safe edges on it. I'm going to go in and run the file off the edge of my finger and round off the excess. Now the file is softer than the sapphire is, i.e. I'm not going to damage the stone. Much better. And now just with a little file on the edges, I'm going to put in some, being careful not to change the geometry of the setting itself. I'm going to put in some notches so that the superglue has something to key onto, because we discovered earlier that they came out relatively easily. If it was a thinner wall, I would need to use a jeweler's saw blade with even finer teeth. That's now the thickness I want. And very carefully, she just pops out. And it goes into the hole next to it. My way up. Pick it up with this tool. And it's back to the crowning file. So you can see I've got the back now sitting proud in this pin vise. And I'm using the crowning file to put a bevel on the edge. Something that made installing these really difficult last time round was the fact that the edges were not flat necessarily, or not square with the sides, but also they didn't have a bevel to help guide them in. And that there is what we're on about. Is this an easy way of making a side dot for a guitar? Hell no. It has, however, been fun, informative, and on this particular instrument, wow, it's going to be awesome. So, and of course I'm going to do it again. One day. And here we are. The final hurdle. Of this part at least. So the process is fairly straightforward. I'm using some microcrystalline wax from Renaissance Wax. Some Renaissance Wax, which is a microcrystalline wax, as a wax resist to help keep glue away from the fretboard. Spot of glue. And this is where it gets fun. The inlay goes in. And we push it down. And immediately get rid of any glue. Pretty cool effect, no? I've got a tiny little gem setting tool here, and I'm just going in, clearing out any wax or super glue. And this is also lightly scratching the surface of the silver, which is giving it a very pleasant, it's still reflective and it's still visible, but it's giving it a nice finish. And we finish up with an application of wax that gets buffed in. If any super glue ended up on the gems, I would have cleaned it up by this point, but there isn't any. It just, well, scrapes off quite easily. But this is a far better result than what I had in this guitar first. Now the finishing touches go in place. I do have to sort the logo out, and that has actually caused me a little bit more trouble than I'd hoped. My original thought was that the engraving would look absolutely great, but from a distance, basically it just disappears and the headstocks look absolutely bare. The next thought was that I could use abalone. Abalone is fantastic. It's blue and green and all of that, and it would match nicely with these inlays. That would be too easy. The abalone is very green, and it's got some of the right blues, but it's too much. It's too disparate. This is not that. And going through my supply of abalone and various inlay materials, they're all too green. What actually works, can you believe it, is my first plan, my first idea. In fact, my favorite color, or at least my favorite color name, cerulean blue. And my first idea for this guitar, or for this logo, was to go in with a fine paintbrush and just highlight it with paint, which is what I'm going to do. And I don't know about you guys, but I tend to overthink. I tend to overcomplicate. I tend to do more, and sometimes I come straight back to the original thought. But this process of guitar building, it is a process. It is a journey, and if we didn't play and explore and push the boundaries and do the non-standard, I think it would be boring in the end. Now, painting this in by hand, yes, I do have an engraving line to follow, so that's nice. It makes me think of the difference between crafting and being an artisan, and there is a difference. I don't want my work to look either too handmade or too machine made, if you get the difference. Of course, I'm sitting here wondering, can I use this gouache paint and mix it in with a resin and then make a cast and have a 3D thing that color matches perfectly with the sapphire. I've also considered crushing up sapphires. Stop it, Ben. I think that these guitars thread that needle quite nicely. There's obviously hand-done, handmade, experimental things going on here. These inlays have not been done before. and my logo is still drying, but yeah, from a distance you can see all the crap on my floor. And up close you can see that that's handmade. The side dots, I could not be happier. Well, I could. It could have worked first time and with out the steep learning curve. But I'm very, very happy with these guitars. Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that. This is the first guitar with our new pickup surround on. First ever. In fact, I think that was one of the first prototypes made. It's just one of those things. It's a journey in ideas, in plans, in skills, and I love it. Thanks for watching. Click like, subscribe, and well, come back. Let's see what, oh, I know what the next build is. Started it at Glastonbury. I'm going to be finishing it here. I think that I've completely reinvented how to make a guitar neck out of necessity. And with that teaser.